Hello and welcome to this Three Continents of Awakening. Today we're going to talk about the third fetter, which is all the harmful routines and habits that we have. And in the panel today, I have beautiful people sitting all over the world. And I would like for you to introduce yourself with your name and where you're sitting, and then we move on to what we're talking about today. So I'm Pernille. And I'm from Denmark, but right now I'm sitting in the US.
I'm Todd. Sorry, Humber. I'm Todd. I'm also sitting in the US, and that's it.
I'm Homer. I'm sitting in the US in Boise, Idaho.
I'm Vince. I'm in Australia.
Hi everyone, I'm Leona and I'm in the UK.
Hi, here Branimir, Austria, Vienna.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much for Branimir sitting here late at night and Vince sitting here ridiculously early in the morning. I'm so happy for you guys to do this. So what we're going to talk about today is about the third fetter. And the first fetter is the fetter where we look through the identification with thought that we have. The second fetter is where we look into the identification with feeling or emotion. So usually it's about that we have an identification, and that identification gives us a certain feeling or emotion, something that is unsettling, that we don't want to feel into. And the third fetter is all the diversions that we do to avoid that feeling. And then we create habits and routines around ourselves that is then tied into the identification. So when the identification falls, usually it has a trigger effect to the feeling and emotions that will surface, and it has a trigger effect to the way that we arrange our lives with the different habits that we have. And that's what I would like to talk about today. I have different questions for you, but also just, if you could share how you experience the different habits having an influence. And I was thinking, to make it easier, I would like to start with one of the, I have had multiple experiences with it, but one of the experiences that I have had was that I had cancer at a point. And after I was cancer-free, one of the reasons that I created a story about that I became cancer-free because I changed my diet. I looked into the psychology of different things. I went to therapy. I did a certain type of exercises and was looking into all traumas. So I was doing a lot of things, and I had this narrative that was that I became cancer-free because of all the diet and the way that I was living my life and the choices that I made. So I had this identification about that I had a choice and that I had any say and do in it at all. And if I didn't stick with my diet, or if I didn't stick with my exercise, or any of the multiple things that I did, then that would have had ramifications, and I would have got metastases and all of that. That was the entire story about it. And when I realized that I had for years and years and years not lived but survived, that was when it started to surface the realization about the identification that I had had with being a survivor. So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to do things to make yourself healthy and to change your direction. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just talking about that identification that comes with it. So there's like a feeling of a doer, that I was in control of my survival, and I was in control of all of that. And obviously the underlying feeling, the contraction that I had about it, was the fear of dying. It was about that I was really, really afraid of getting metastases and dying. So I had that delusion that I was in control. And seeing through that, the first thing that happened was that I had a lot of fear of dying. a lot of fear that had also been suppressed in the period where I had the cancer. And I had given myself that role of somebody that was, surviving and fighting and all of that. So that was the trickle down for me. That was the thing that got unraveled for me when I looked through it. So that was the identification, the feeling, and the emotions attached with that, and the habits that made me do different things because of the identification.
Would you say for people who are listening to this and, hearing that, do you, because I'm assuming that your actual behaviors of what you were doing in terms of, diet and all of that stuff still continued. It was just losing the identification with those things as like the hang up of it. Is that? Yeah. It's not about going into, oh, I was vegan and then I saw through self and now I'm McDonald's and milkshakes. It's not that. It's just looking into the identification, for example, as a survivor that has hooks into certain actions. So there's nothing wrong with the way that with green smoothies or any of the things or supplementations or any of the things that are there. There's nothing wrong with it. It's about the identification attached to it. And how would you say your feeling of like doership of from before the identification was lost to also still having green smoothies and stuff, but not feeling that sort of doership of it? Can you go into detail on that? Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking, because these things are very difficult to talk about. So it's also super important to ask questions. So thank you for that. Yes, it's one of the things I'm talking about in the curriculum, and moving away from that that pseudo reality where we think that we have a choice, where we think that we can choose to do something that will then have an effect in something, and then going from that mind-made decision, I need a kale smoothie, into it's more a body movement towards a kale smoothie. And there's nothing tied up with having one or not having one. Where before it was tied up with, if I don't have my smoothie, I'm on vitamin C, and I don't do the meditation, I don't do all, there was like a full roster of things that needed to do in order to. So it was done with the purpose of something else happening. Yeah. And that is such a constricting and contracting energy, where I might still take my vitamin C and my smoothies and do my meditations, but there's no hooks in it. So if I'm doing or not doing, it's from a completely different space, because there's no identification with it anymore. I'm not as we also talked about, that there can be that identification with, I am a survivor, I am a kale drinking, vegan, I am and then there's a lot of identification in that, and lots of hooks where we're still tied into a very, very constricted and limited view, where we believe that I am in control.
Yeah, and there's also no focus on an end result.
Absolutely.
Now you could just do something just for the joy of it.
Yeah.
Rather than having a purpose.
Could you elaborate, Leona? Could you talk about one of the experiences you have had where there used to be a purpose, or used to be, and then what happened when you let go of that purpose? And
yeah, I used to have an eating disorder. So that was all about control. Trying to control my own environment, because obviously I felt that there was a real lack of control in my life, but it was also punishing. It was really, really punishing, self-punishing. But the idea ultimately was to be slim, and that was kind of the motivation, the conscious motivation to do that. So and then when I kind of recovered from that, there was still this control control around food, even though I was bulimic, and I was never anorexic, and I stopped making myself sick. But there was still for years control around food, and there may still be a bit. I'm not sure. I've really kind of examined it, and I'm not sure. Sometimes perhaps, I'm not sure, but yeah, there's, since waking up and really examining things, because I think waking up really pushes stuff in your face. It's like that's when the hard work begins, and looking at identity is key to dropping the fetters. I mean, it's the thing that works to drop everything, because identity is tied up with thoughts and feelings, and obviously Fetter 3 actions and things like that. So I would say, yeah, I find it, I mean, I've got this kind of unusual relationship with food, I would say. It was not the norm, but it's what I enjoy, and it has to just be fun. And I can't really do anything more, even diet, because it's that end purpose thing that kind of has lost its interest or its drive. I can only do things if I enjoy it, and it kind of just naturally unfolds. But saying that, there's a downside to that, because my executive functioning is really poor. So it's really, really challenging. Well, challenging is the wrong word, because it's not challenging, because I don't really care. If I've got to do something that's kind of practical, and say something financial, I've got to contact the bank and sort something out, or the latest one is my pension, just having to top up on my pension for the future, and it's like, oh, I can't be bothered, I don't really care, but I will care when I don't have the money when I'm old. But it's really, there's no motivation to do it, and the only way I get something done most of the time is there's this sensation that grows in my chest of discomfort, and then I kind of allow it to grow, because it's the thing, I know it needs to be done, I've got to do it at some point before it's too late, and then it gets done, and then I think, oh God, I should have just done it before, but earlier. But that's something that's kind of more challenging now, the executive functioning, worldly stuff, that's just so uninteresting to me, and I don't care on one level.
It's really funny you're mentioning it, because there is in the awakening curriculum, there all of the fetters, I end them with questions where I ask people to look into these different things before they move on to the next fetter. And one of the questions for this fetter is exactly about executive functioning. It's exactly about how has that changed, and what difference do you sense is different. And it's exactly that part about the body yes, body no, that the motivation to do things is lying in a completely different place than the purpose of.
And also I find that I'm really looking at identity, and I still got hooks into identity. Of course, it takes a while to kind of unhook them all, but I do notice that kind of actions in my life that I do to feel comfortable, and obviously, as you said before, it's an avoidance of feeling discomfort, but they really point to where I'm identified. Things that I'm doing in my life to feel comfortable always point to identity and attachment.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's so automatic that you know, if I wasn't clued up about it, I wouldn't know that it's the actions are there to avoid something uncomfortable, because it's so automatic and it's so ingrained in us, you know, growing up, and that's how everyone behaves, and you wouldn't think there was anything kind of remiss about it until you start inquiring, and you see, and the more you look, the more things become uncomfortable, and they just don't sit comfortably anymore, things that you wouldn't even think about or even notice previously. So there's a lot of work post waking up, and it's not all roses. Sure. But it's really interesting, and I love that you can't hide from anything. Well, I feel I can't hide from anything. I things need to be addressed, or but there's such a beauty in it, because just sitting with the sensation or the feeling is enough. Welcoming any discomfort So I really love to welcome. I know you talk about making space for stuff. I love the word welcoming. So just really sitting and welcoming anything that feels uncomfortable, and just really just being with it and allowing it to have space and to be felt into, without the necessity for thoughts. But if I do have persistent thoughts because I'm hung up about something, because there's identity there, I will look to see what that thought train is pointing to in my identity. Then I can drop that. Once I like to see where it's attached, what it's attached to, and then I can just drop those thoughts and be in the feeling and the sensation of it.
So,
which I find really helpful.
So could you go into more detail with how you do that? So it could be kind of like, how do you guide yourself in that? You have a feeling, you have a contraction in the body.
So say there's some anxiety that's arising around something that I feel threatened about.
Yes.
And then I will clock that those are thoughts, and the thoughts are generating uncomfortable feelings. I'm not sure which comes first. Probably a subtle sensation will come first, and then thoughts will jump on that and attach, and the whole thing can escalate. And then I don't have anxiety anymore, but I can feel uncomfortable around certain identities, and then I will clock that they're just thoughts, and I will then inquire into what they're attached to. What identity am I holding on to that's making me feel like I've got to control something? And then when I see what that is, then I just sit quietly and just welcome those feelings, drop the thought, use the thought to perhaps even amplify the feeling, let the feeling really establish itself, the sensations, and then then the thoughts can be let go of because they're only thoughts. And it's the feeling, the sensation to me, which is important to really sort of dive into and really feel into and to welcome. And even if there's resistance, which often there's resistance to resistance as well. And when one can spot that, it's really, really helpful. It's the same as thoughts. Commenting on thoughts are really tricky and slippery. Same as resistance to resistance. Yes. It's really good to be able to clock it. And it's like, oh, thank God I've seen it. Now I can just like let it go and just be with whatever resistance is coming up. Is fine. It all becomes fine and it all becomes okay. And then I will sit with that discomfort in the sensations. And then often I'm doing that and I'm really diving into them and allowing them. And then I can be distracted by something really small. And then I come back to it and I'm like, oh, either it's gone and there's no intention to make it go. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm just feeling it. I'm allowing it to be there. And then, yeah, either it's completely gone or it's really shifted and changed and it's not really has any kind of stickiness or weight or juice to it anymore. So it really is, it can work like magic sometimes, where you just have to sort of feel it for or just acknowledge it or just welcome it and then it's gone. Sometimes it can be really quick. Depends how deep the identity around it is. Yeah. So I find it really fascinating. Yeah, the things we do to avoid feeling uncomfortable.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that point about the resistance was the biggest discovery, number one discovery I had. I mean, among the other beliefs, no self, of course, and other identification, but the resistance part was huge. That I never thought that I was resisting feeling, never thought directly. For the first time I discovered, oh, look, I was always resisting to feel the emotion as they are. And then, as you said, there is a resistance to this resistance as well. That was in the later stages. Maybe I got a hang of it a little bit, but that part is so crucial. I would say even number one, when we're really working with emotions and feelings, and just first thing is to discover the resistance. Where is hiding? Probably it's not something like that you can really spot on, like, this is like, it's a combination of different things. It can be like also narrative and then emotions altogether, feelings, but it's there. When you get a hang of it, it's key. For me, it was also, as you said, just to welcome it, be there with it. But then in later stages, just to show love to it, it was transformative. Just another another way. I just noticed that the things get even more and more. Just the resistance is gone. It was gone after after a while. It was work, lots of work actually. It was maybe a year or two. Lots of different emotions were coming, discomfortable feelings, and there was always resistance to it. But being open to it first, this is the first thing, and then when you get a hang of it a little bit with that, just to try to show love to it. Just this is another nuance here, just to show love, and then magic happens. Then you see there is just complete emptiness of that there is no one there. This will come on its own somewhere. You don't have to. In my case, was that I didn't have to investigate if there is someone or something. It just came on its own. Oh, there is no one here between. It's just a feeling, it's just a sensation. There is no one here. So I would say just this was amazing. Thanks for bringing that up.
And I would agree. Sorry, I would agree. Just to add as well, like bringing love and compassion is so important, and then the whole experience becomes sweet. So you start off with this real discomfort, and then the minute you welcome, allow, love, have compassion for yourself, compassion for the situation, the whole thing changes and becomes very sweet and intimate.
Right. It's magic. It's just, it's fascinating. That was a huge discovery. Very direct, very empirical. You don't need books for that. No teaching. It's very intimate. So, and then I just wanted to say something that Schubert mentioned. This is also huge. We shouldn't moralize awakening in terms of I have to adopt certain beliefs. I have to do some diets or do more do more sports in order because people are doing that who are awakening or something like that. These are just another layers of beliefs, and this has nothing. I mean, really nothing to do with that. Just accept it. Just when we do that, we just actually our attention is not on the process, on the practice, but somewhere else, and this is so important. So. It doesn't matter if you want to, do some diet, do it, but don't relate it to awakening, to this process of, questioning your beliefs and be with the feelings. It's a different thing. So I just wanted to stress that. You were hinting, to that, I guess. So, moralizing awakening, it can be a trap. So that's something I realized after a while, that I was trying to behave in a certain way because I was reading and watching some, Buddhists, of course, videos and books, and everybody does. So, you have to be a nice person. Of course, this comes later. you become nicer, definitely, but it's not about that actually, because it's not about adopting new beliefs. It's actually questioning your beliefs and then just be here in this moment.
It's super important what you're talking about, Branimir, because there is like that idea that when you are awakened, then you are in a certain way, and there's so much identification with that. Then you have to act in a certain way and always, meet people with love, and so there's like you're so identifying. You're completely smack back in the first Fetter. Right. About identification to be in a certain way.
I mean, if you could, of course, you meet people with love, but if it doesn't come natural at that point, it's all you're faking it a little bit. So
exactly. Speaking with the soft voice and have that certain look that I hear you, I understand. Yeah, exactly that.
Being authentic. It's just yourself. It's the key. Another point that I want to raise: being completely authentic, and it's not always easy. Of course, there's a lot of conditioning. The body's programmed not to be authentic. The body's programmed to resist, to fight. That's why I want to stress. Many people say awakening is not a work. It's not a practice. Just surrender to whatever it is. But actually, that part is the surrendering part is the most difficult part of, I would say, of this of the whole process, because to surrender to whatever it is, it's so difficult, especially when you start, because the body is not, it doesn't know that. The body is conditioned to fight, to resist, as we said, And there's a lot of work, because surrendering is not like something that I'm going to achieve immediately. It's a process, it's a practice, I would say, and it takes some time. Probably for me is different than other people. For everybody's different, of course. But I was conditioned a lot in my life, so I know it took a lot of work every day just to surrender, to learn how to surrender. So this part is probably the most difficult. From my perspective, it was much more difficult than questioning beliefs and thoughts and working with them, than just surrendering, and again and again and again and again. I cannot. I shouldn't underestimate that.
Can you describe more your surrendering? What are you surrendering? How are you surrendering?
That's so difficult to describe. It's just being, as I said, just being open, just meet whatever arises with openness, not to react to that. And there's something that I cannot explain, that this is something that few shifts happen just while doing that. I remember just like, yes, why, like in a sense, why I resisted. It was very clear that whole resistance to whatever arises was making me suffer. It was very clear. And then the surrendering became more and more natural. So openness, as we say, it's not very different than just using the same words or different words for the same thing, than working with the resistance, actually. Just being open, it's not easy. It's not
so like surrendering to life, surrendering
to whatever arises, because we are conditioned in different ways. Surrendering, it's easier for certain. It was easier for me to surrender to certain situations in which I was not that much conditioned, than to surrender to some stuff at my job, or something that was conditioning much more. So that required more work, more accepting. It's acceptance. It's being open, combination of being open, acceptance, and then later just welcoming and just showing love. But this is, I would say, I wouldn't jump from one point from all being open to showing love immediately. Just taking naturally. It's difficult to immediately showing love to whatever arises, because it feels like faking it a little bit. It feels like too much work all of a sudden. So take it easy a little bit. Just get a hang of the process, and then this was my experience, and then see how it works for you. So it's a combination of different things. So it's difficult to talk. It's surrendering. You just go into that. It just it's intimate. It's very intuitive as well. So trust your intuition and let the process, I would say, just present itself. Openness, love. That's it.
But it's also about the part that there's some things that we really very easily can surrender to, like you say, Branimir. There's some things that are very easy, but then there are other things that are so hardcore beliefs, or there's so much trauma or contraction about it that we don't want that. That we act as if it's real. We act as if I'm so shameful about something, and then we really act as if that is real. So it helps when we look at it as an anthropologist, where we just observe what is happening. We have no opinion about it. We have no wishes for it to be any different, and we just observe. I had one in my Danish group where she did that, and she was looking at her family pattern regarding money. And she found out that she had a lot of shame about money. And then she was like, but hang on, it's not my fault that I'm born into a family that hasn't got money and hasn't got the tools on how to cultivate money or how to deal with money. It's not my fault. I can't hold that against me. I can't spend my entire life holding that against me. It's just how the cards were dealt, and that was it. And in her, that just released so much, just looking at it and going like, but hang on, there's no need to be shameful about this. It's not even mine.
Yeah, right. In a way, saying, so what?
Yeah, exactly.
That's also the part that I didn't mention. So what? But this will come. So what? This is also, probably the key of the surrendering, but it's not that easy at the beginning. Yeah, but it's when so what arrives, then it's, there should be some opening after that, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Branimir, Branimir, I'm curious. So did you find, like, what was your key, or what was your clue that you were resisting something? Was it like feeling something in the body that was your cue to it? How did you know? And then what did you actually do in the process of surrendering to that resistance?
I would say it was, I think that even I remember the situation when I first time like really approached that mindfully. Actually, that was the key. Just I never approached that. It was feeling. It was emotion sensation that was there. I never. I just realized that. Okay, I never tried to sit with it openly, and then when I tried it, when I put attention there, I felt huge. Like no, like. And that was the moment I remember. And then I realized, okay, so this is this is how I should now. This is what should I address now. So this is how it started the whole story working with that. And then funny thing happened after, 10 or 15 minutes. I already felt that this was actually what was all about. Actually, one part of awakening, just resistance to whatever arises. And it was. That's why I'm saying this is very intimate process and very. A very personal in a way, and that's why you can read all the books, you can we can all share, but you should do the work. People who have to do the work. So I think that was the key moment for me, just sitting with the feeling, and then when I realized, oh, there is so much resistance just to stay with the feeling. Of course, there is a narrative related to that. Of course, so showing love, also not to being open. The key is also not to be open to the sensation, but also to the intellectual, narrative that arises a little bit. Just to also not neglecting it and just letting, I'm going to let him go, and it will come back. So just to be open to that thoughts. So what? No, it's fine. Everything is fine. So that was the moment, I would say. And then, of course, many more different situations arose. But yeah, I mean, at the end, the approach was basically the same. It was not that there's no like thing that, okay, there is shame, so I'm going to approach the shame differently than I'm going to approach fear and anxiety. So basically it was the same thing, more or less. Of course, there is much more, certain emotions triggered more reactions. So, it required a little bit more work, so to say, but approach was pretty much, I would say, the same or similar, working with that. It's not like a therapeutic work, so you have to, do just a completely different thing. You just, there is a way you have to do the stuff, and it's very empirical and scientific, I would say, self-scientific in a way. You have to really look into deep, very deep.
Amazing.
Well, I'm wondering, I was wondering if I can bring in a personal example.
Yes.
That Leona, well, you, Pernell and Leona and Branimir have been talking about. So this is what's coming up for me, Tuesday. Well, last week, my wife and I were figuring out what we were going to do this week. And she said, I'd like to go visit my son-in-law. And I said, well, Tuesday would work for me. And then we dropped it until Tuesday morning. And I didn't hear anything about it from her or anything. So Tuesday or Monday or whatever, I'm planning out my Tuesday. So Tuesday morning, she comes in and says, Homer, I want to go to Wendell today. So let's go. My first reaction right then and there was, what the fuck? So I can't remember. And I'm just, so it brings in what you were saying, noticing. I'm noticing, what the fuck? There was this contraction, and I'm going, and she said, yeah, I just want to go today because of her things and stuff. I'm going, wait a minute. I had plans. You haven't brought it up until now, and I've got these plans and stuff. And she says, well, I just need to go now, or I want to go now. And I'm going in my mind, and I'm watching all of this go on. The mind just fired up saying, what the fuck? It was saying, why haven't you talked about it with me before? And then the feelings of being disrespected, not included, ignored came up. And this huge, and this is this huge contraction. And I watch myself also go passive aggressive. And I'm not sure if that's the right term, but I said, well, you can just go by yourself and I'll stay home. So I saw that. And she said, I don't want to do that, right? I want you to come with me. I said, well, it's better I stay home. So I watched that happen. And then kind of there was a break in the conversation. And then I noticed, well, Homer, you could be authentic and tell her how you're feeling. And then there was, if somebody said something, there was a resistance to that. Like, I'm not going to tell her what's going on with me. I mean, right? There was fear of telling her what I was feeling. I don't know where that fear comes from, but I mean, it's probably childhood stuff. But anyway, fear and a contraction of, I'm not going to talk to her about this stuff. I'm just going to be passive aggressive and say, I'm not going to go. But somewhere in there, because of the work that we do, I don't know. I said, Sharon, I need to talk. And I told her, I'm feeling disrespected, I'm feeling hurt, and I'm feeling left out. And I had these plans. And I just spewed it all out. And I'm just watching all of this happen. And it's kind of like Leona said, and Branimir said, with all that authentic, vulnerable speaking of it, the energy just started to really go away. And and at the end, I said, I don't really remember now, but there was a point in there that she did say, well, I can understand why you're feeling all that. And that helped dissipate it all too. And we ended up going yesterday, but it's kind of like Leona said, I was just with it all, watching the mind become passive, just watching it all and staying with it as best as I could. But somewhere in there, it wasn't and this is where it wasn't allowing or accepting all of it. It just happened like naturally that this, if you need to use words, this love and acceptance just stepped in all on its own. And I had to go talk to her about it. And then by just talking to her and releasing that energy, the love and compassion was there automatically. There was no need to do anything other than be authentic and honest. So I don't know if any of that works with, it just sounded like when you guys are talking, all of this came down to like Tuesday morning for me. And it all just became, beautiful. Yeah. I'm sitting there, even afterwards, I just said, isn't this beautiful?
But I love you for doing this, Homer, because you're really so honest about it that you, exactly, because most people when they become passive aggressive, they don't want to acknowledge that. That is the resistance. I am not a passive aggressive person. I'm not acknowledging that I am, so I'm just gonna leave that. But you just to acknowledge that and going like, well, apparently I am. Here we go. that is exactly just allowing what is. And obviously I'm not, I'm not saying that it's a good thing or bad thing to blame thing on one's partner. It's not at all where we're at. It's about owning your shit. Owning that this is what is happening right now. I am with it right now. You have a relationship where you can be open to your wife and say, hang on, I feel all this. She listens to it and creates space, welcoming everything that is happening. And then you see, oh, it's not about her having actually done anything against you. It's all in your mind. It's all happening in your mind. It's all here. It's got nothing to do with her whatsoever. It's beautiful. Thank you very much. Love that so much.
Yeah, I think that's really, sorry, I just thought that was really lovely to hear, because I'm in a new relationship and I've been really seeing a lot of identity. And if I feel really uncomfortable about an interaction or something that's happened, like you described, just being really vulnerable, no blame on the other person, because I recognize it's my stuff, but just sharing my stuff with them. When you did that, that really affected me, because I'm like this and I was really uncomfortable. It's nothing to do with you, but just sharing that can become a really beautiful moment between you both. That really creates so much richness in the relationship, and vulnerability and honesty and trust. And as long as there's no blame, because why would there be if you're owning your shit? It's really nice and intimate. So intimate to share it, but it can be really scary as well.
For sure. And yes, Leona, I agree. And the one thing I want to say is kind of what Pernilla said, to develop that mindfulness, to be able to watch and see all of this. And the other thing is to be with what is, no matter what, and it's kind of Branimir said, no matter what the is, you be with it, you're honest and authentic with it, no matter what it is. And you can't blame, because it's just, well, you can, obviously, but the work we do, you can't blame anybody, because it's what is happening here and now in your own body mind. So you can't blame anybody. You're just kind of like being a reporter. Exactly. I'm reporting that my mind's just going fucking nuts right now, or I'm feeling left out. I mean, this, and it's the work we do, and or at least part of the work we do, and it's beautiful to own up and be with what is present.
So, Homer, would you say that there's a shift happening from you seeing yourself as a passive-aggressive person to a person that gets passive-aggressive from time to time? So I'm talking about ownership of, or identification as a person who is afflicted with a particular characteristic.
Right.
Well,
that's the work that has helped it make it somewhat more easier, is that passive aggressive behavior is just what is arising. It is not who I am. So it does kind of, so all of that story that I said was not who I am.
Yeah.
I've disidentified with it all, even though it felt bad and I still contracted and stuff and fear came up. There was the practice of the 10 fetters and liberation unleashed and all, and disidentification. There's still somewhere in the background it's running. This isn't who you are. This is just stuff that's happening. And so you can be honest. Well, that helps me be honest and authentic with it. So thanks for that question, Vince.
I had an interesting experience fairly recently where I was having a disagreement with a friend of mine. and we were both trying to be right. Subtly, we were both trying to be right, and I hate that, having to be right. And I clocked it in myself, and I clocked it in him. And then afterwards, I was reviewing our interaction, and I recognized, oh my God, he's right. He's absolutely right, just as much as I'm right. And that was revelation, because it made me think, you know what? Oh, let him be right. I don't have to be right anymore. He can be right. That's fine with me. And it really changed the goalposts for me big time. It's like, I hated being right anyway. And I hate that argument where you have to be right and the other one does as well. And when I was no, from his perspective, he's totally right. Everything he says is utterly valid. And then I could go, oh my God, how wonderful is that? Yeah, you can have that.
Yeah. So liberating, yeah.
Yeah, really was.
Yeah, I had a similar thing at one point because, you know, I think like most people, especially in the US during maybe the Trump years in particular, there was so much polarization and there was so much being, you know, in our little pockets of antagonism against the other, and having to, you know, have all of your facts and all of your, you know, your statistics, and of course they're wrong. And there was just so much of that for so long that when that kind of identification let go, and I realized that it's okay for them to believe whatever they believe, you know, like I don't have to have there's nothing in me that is in any way related to what that person thinks or believes or anything else. And there's no reason that my, you know, feeling of discomfort has got to be predicated on whether that person agrees with me or not, or any of that. And the fact that they can be completely right based on the facts that they have heard and their opinions that they have been inculcated with throughout their life, it really frees up all of that. And it is such a relief to not have to be that like warrior for truth all the time. And it's exhausting. It's really exhausting. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean, Leona.
I couldn't even carry all that ammunition of facts. I mean, I've got a brain like a sieve now. So I can't remember anything. So that's kind of a relief in itself. I don't even do that far, you know.
It actually makes me want to ask you, Todd, because I know that you have been vegan activist at some point.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're talking about here in the third Fetter, where there's an identification and there's a feeling and an emotion connected with it, and then there's a diversion. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I was going to say too, based on that, because when Leona said about having, you know, the sieve for facts, there was a period right after I went vegan. So this was like 15, 16 years ago. And I became a very devoted animal activist. And I had like, I had put together a document of maybe 20 or 30 pages of like factory farming statistics and environmental statistics, and like all the reasons why, you know, animal agriculture was killing the planet and ourselves and our health and all of that. And like I committed it to memory so that I could go out and, you know, leaflet and talk to people and have anything that the person put forward, I felt like confident that I had the statistic that would be able to you know, counteract that. And that became like a huge identity factor at that point of being an animal activist, being on the right side of things, being, you know, a defender of the animals and the environment and all of that. And to be fair, still vegan, still, you know, not saying there's anything wrong with any of that, but it's the identification with it that was so strong, and that it was just creating this extra boost of an ego. And you know, Pernilla, like you were saying, you know, the other side of that too is that I went on to being, you know, because of family history of heart disease and heart attacks, I've been very cautious about that sort of thing myself. So Pernilla, similar to you after your cancer, and then Leona, similar to you with your eating disorder, I have had basically eating disorders of different types throughout my life. And then because of having diagnosis of having a lot of plaque in my arteries and a father and grandfather who both died of heart attacks at 43 and 45, it was like a thing where I was like, okay, I absolutely have to get this under control. And so it went from being not just living a, fat-free, salt-free, healthy, whole foods, vegan lifestyle, but there was also related to that, because again, especially during the Trump years, there became that whole thing of being a, Whole Foods and Trader Joe's shopping, yoga doing, kind of liberal type who's just into the whole health bubble and all of that. And that became this sort of separate identity. And all of that is a way of, like Pernilla was saying, defending from the underlying insecurity that's always there, basically about our own mortality and about our impermanence as a human. So the health, the diet, in order to push away the inevitable heart attack and my own demise at some point in the probably near future at that rate, to feeling like I had a safe bubble of people who were like in my own ideology space, and who it just gave that feeling of security, that feeling like having a tribe, and then that feeling of really a comfort that distracts from that incredible unease that was in the body. I mean, again, during the Trump years, we were like in a constant state of unsettled, more than unease. And so we did everything that we could basically to distract from it, whether it was turning to food or, any possible distraction just to alleviate that. And a lot of it was comedy and poking fun at other people. And then also, again, like feeling that sense of being on the right side of history. And it's all just a way of distracting from our own unease about a situation that we're not happy with. But again, I think like all of it really comes down to a fear of our own mortality. So, but an interesting thing in terms of my own development with it, which, I wish I had I wish I could say I did a specific practice and that thing shifted and that flipped, but I don't really know how it has changed, but it has. And I think one of the things actually this year that was really, I don't know whether it was the thing that shifted it, or if it was like really indicative of the loosening of it. It was traveling out of the country for the first time. And, prior to that, I had that lifestyle, that the healthy thing that I was doing. And it wasn't, it didn't have the identification with it that it used to had, but it was still very purpose driven, like in the way that I'm doing this because I'm trying to still alleviate, health issues. And if I don't do that, it's somewhat suicidal and all of that. And then we went away to Europe, and it just dropped. It was like, oh, it's okay to, eat a vegan pastry or to have whatever. And it was like the alarm bells just didn't go off. And that was the weirdest thing, is that before that, I literally like could not have put a piece of food in my mouth that was, something that had fat, sugar, salt in it. Or if I did, I would have felt incredibly guilty for, like it really felt like I was eating rat poison or something. And something just let go. And it became just normal. It just felt completely natural. There was no push or pull against it. There was no identification of, well, now I'm a person who eats pastry versus now I'm a person who never eats pastry. That just let go. And I don't really know exactly what the catalyst there was, but there was something about being out of the environment, and since we got back, it still hasn't changed. So I mean, I'm still going back to eating more closer to how I was before, but there's still not the hang up with, eating occasional sugar or, some fat or something. And it's a very strange thing that it just feels completely natural and completely relaxed without being something that I really can pinpoint exactly how it happened. So I wish that it was more helpful, but
Is
Yeah.
is it some kind of inquiry or investigation that you would recommend to look into it, to look into that identification that we have and the perceived connection between something else, which all of us here know is not there, but
yeah, absolutely.
you're really good at those inquiries. Do you have some
Thank you.
a tool or something which you could recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do the same thing that we do with any kind of looking for a self sort of thing, is in the situation where, if you are feeling like if you eat this, if you eat this pastry, it's going to kill you. You can look at, it has nothing to do with the pastry, and it has nothing to do with the biological ramifications of it. It has to do with your internal feeling of the identification of the one who is on a narrative line, for one thing, of, if I eat this pastry, there's this future me who is going to be having to reap the negative benefit or the negative outcomes of this thing. So we can investigate that, and you can investigate the discomfort that comes up with, the idea of this. I mean, you don't even have to hold the pastry in front of you. You can just think about it and feel that discomfort that comes in the body, and feel into where that discomfort is coming from. What happens if you just sit with it? And, as we were talking about earlier, how does that discomfort correlate to anything in your environment? How does it correlate to the pastry? How does it correlate to your future, demise? These are just thoughts that are linking these things. And so investigating what the sensations actually are, removing the thought from it, and then exploring what thoughts are coming up in relation to pastry and some sort of bodily contraction or fear sensation or something, and really just investigating our situation and our experience in the moment, without putting the narrative thread on top of it, without putting the the whole storyline connecting pastry to future death, and ignoring the fact that there's a sort of an alarm bell that's going on in the body that oftentimes we're not even aware of, and recognizing that alarm bell isn't really necessarily connected to any of that, and then seeing if you can sit with whatever that sensation is that we are not analyzing,
Wiring into.
well that we're like attributing it as an alarm bell, but it's just a sensation. And is it really a problematic negative warning sensation, or what is it actually there? And then see what comes up. And you might have a memory of something else, from your past that's completely unrelated that comes up, and then you'll recognize, oh, there is, this connection that was completely unconscious, and then you just let that go and then just be with the sensation. So I think something like that might be useful. And I think it was probably doing things like that, over the course of however long that I had been doing these things, that probably helped to loosen it up. But again, I didn't do one specific thing for that particular identification.
Thank you. You said something that I thought was really, all of it was really interesting, but I really like that part about becoming aware of that narrative that we have, because so often we have this idea that the narrative or the narrator that we have, that is the voice of truth, and if that person says, I am not passive aggressive, then I am not passive aggressive, and that is the hill I'm gonna die on. You know, that we have that idea that the narrative, you know, is just a part of us, and becoming aware of that narrative also just being a thought is super helpful in really dive, and also making it easier to dive into the resistance towards the resistance.
Mm.
So I get that the third fetter, rites and rituals, as it's often put, it's really easy to identify how I am compelled to go to church every Sunday morning, otherwise I'm going to go to hell. Right, that's an easy one to see how that fits in. But also, what you said, Pernilla, doing something, and I guess there's a repetitive aspect to that, doing something repetitively in order to achieve something to achieve a different way of looking at myself, kind of thing. But then I recognized that I fool myself. I lie to myself all the time. Things happen and I don't know why they're happening, and I really easily blame things outside of me for that happening, rather than accepting that the reason that I'm doing something is to avoid an uncomfortable feeling. I'm so glad I'm perfect. I just don't have any of that problem. or is it that I'm so good at lying to myself that I think I don't have any of that problem? I don't know. See, so I need your guys' help here to root out something that I can describe as that particular fetter. So I know, for example, I do identify. Maybe I don't anymore. Maybe that's changed. But anyway, I did identify as Vince loves sweet things. He loves ice cream. He loves cakes. He loves sweet things. Vince likes a cup of coffee in the morning. He'll have 2 cups of coffee a day. Vince likes to play golf. Vince, you know, I have all these identifications, these stories about Vince. But I recognize them as just stories. I can see that that's what they are. They're beliefs I've carried, and they're beliefs that sometimes still serve me, but I guess I'm not locked into them in the same way that I used to be. Maybe that's the difference, eh? But I'm sure I have rites and rituals that I just cannot see. Help me find something.
Yeah, but it's a lot of things, but it is exactly like you're saying, like the coffee in the morning, and then just looking into if there's not coffee, is that okay, or is life completely falling apart? What contraction is it, you know, in the body if you can't have what you always have? You know, if you have a designated parking space in front of your office, and that's your parking space, and somebody else is taking it, or you are doing grocery shopping and you put your cucumber in your cart, and then somebody comes and pick up the cucumber, and that's your cucumber. I mean, we have so many small things that we're identifying with that we're not even aware of. What is interesting with the third fetter is looking into all the things that we do for a purpose, you know, or that we justify that we're doing, like Homer was talking about, justifying justifying that, being angry, and then just looking into that, and his wife just held the space for that, and then that justification even died. There was no more meat on that. but it's like if, for example, if we get angry at somebody, and we don't want to be a person that's angry, then we justify that it's actually reasonable that I got angry because, you know, Vince, I'm angry at you because we had an appointment and you didn't show up, and it's actually reasonable and justifiable that I'm angry at you because we had said 2 o'clock and you didn't come until 3:30. So I can justify my anger and blame on you and point fingers at you and divert at you and all of that, instead of just looking underneath that contraction that is there. And it's that diversion that is so important to become aware of, especially when we walk into the 4th and the 5th fetter, because that is exactly where where we're just kicking the can in front of us if we're not working within in the 3rd fetter, and becoming aware that there is no connection between you being late and me being angry. The anger is happening in me because there's something underneath that I do not want to feel. I have a feeling of unworthiness, and when you are late, then I have a feeling that I'm unworthy and I'm not worthy of your time, and here we go, and all about that. Yeah. Which has nothing to do with what actually happened. So it's a complete diversion from something that I don't want to look at.
I'm always a bit amazed at how we're talking about the same thing, but each of our experience is so unique, absolutely so unique that, you know. So what Branimir, what you were saying about that acceptance of things, you know, I just feel so lucky that when I woke up, it was all about accepting what I can't change, what's already happened. And so that just changed my life in so many ways. And I suspect that it whatever fetter it might be or not, I don't know, but I suspect it kind of knocked out the first couple in a lot of ways, not completely, of course. But for me, it's easy to accept what's in front of me. There is no choice. It's not, how can it possibly be hard when here it is and I don't have a single choice about the whole thing? That's what it is. And of course, what it is isn't what I describe it as. What it is isn't my interpretation of it. It's unknown what it actually is. So my interpretation of it is also even just one more fairy floss level away from what's actually going on. So why would I question it?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about awakening from many different points, shifts, non-dual shifts, feeling no separation and everything. But, you know, it comes down to this, you know, whatever is simply is. Whatever arises simply arises. And you just said, when you notice that there is no effort to change this or an impulse to change, that's a game changer. And then the simplicity of whatever is reveals itself. So everything becomes so simple. But there is this also part that is always there. That's because of, you know, living life, different life, and the comparison is still there. So and there is always, it's simple, but it's beautiful at the same time. So we talk about fetters and the work, how difficult it is, but also we should also talk about how things are getting easier, simple, but also beautiful at some point. And there is this subtle joy. So you should, you know, promote this awakening a little bit more, because it's the best thing that could happen in your life. You know, for me, it was just, this is what it is. There is absolutely nothing outside of this. And all the shifts were great, but, you know, I've completely forgot them. You know, what the moment is here, you can talk about the present moment. I don't know, you define it, whatever it is. It doesn't need to be defined. doesn't ask for that. So, and even if it feels like an effort, keeping orienting towards the simplicity of whatever it is, it's still good. I would really recommend as a pointer throughout this whole process. Just keep orienting towards. Let the mind go there. The mind, stop reading lots of books, because more books you read, the mind will automatically go there. It's just you cannot control that. It's out of your control. The mind loves concepts, loves books, loves teachers. It would just drop them at some point. It's good to read, but at some point trust your process. And then the simplicity, orient towards the simplicity of this, it's that, nothing else is there. Sometimes you should just think there is nothing to say anymore at some point. So, but we have to talk about it definitely. For some people it's easy. I don't know. Many people, I don't know, maybe that comes with age or something, but many people just, even if they don't go through this awakening process, of course they have self-identification, but there's lots of easiness in their life. There's pure acceptance. Just being pure acceptance of life as it is. It's a game changer, even if you don't go through awakening, I would say, right?
I'm curious. Have any of you experienced that you had habits that was diversions from something underlying? I'm thinking of that.
Oh, sure, for sure.
Fun.
Oh, well, I said for sure. I mean, the examples that have been given, sports, or I was playing tennis. I derived my identity and my status at a tennis club on my ability to play tennis. I derived my identity through money. You said cancer, and Leona and Todd was food. Mine was money. The more money I had, the more identity I had. These are, yeah, for sure.
Was it always like that, or there was a changing throughout your life, or there was a point when, I'm just curious, because for me it was all different things. As a teenager, then as a adult, and then when I got a job, and that was
right
a job, and it was constant something else.
Yeah. I was a tennis player. I don't know, when did I start playing tennis? Maybe when I was a teenager, played it all the way up to, I don't know, let's say 50, when I was 50 or something. And when I got invited to go to a team, I was huge ego boost. When I lost, it was a failure. All of that stuff with tennis. Now I play once a week. I still like to win, but somebody said, I think maybe it was you, Branimir, or Todd, I can't remember. Somebody said, you still can do all these things that you used to do. You just not attached or not identified with them. So yeah, the same with money. The shift in money just happened maybe like 4 years ago, where I would have labeled myself, I'm a saver. The more money I can save, the better I feel, because I was afraid of not having enough money. So there was that fear of insecurity, that money covered up. And that has dissipated quite a bit. And a lot of it with the work of disidentification and feeling into the fear or the insecurity and being with it, and realizing that was just a contraction that didn't need to be have a reaction to. So now I'm much more, and I still save. But there's no identification to it. It's not who I am. But I'm also more free with it, with money. I make more contributions more now than I've ever contributed to organizations in the past. So these are
it's
habits.
it's a really, really good one, because it's when our practices or our habits change because of awakening, it's so subtle, and it's almost like looking at a previous life, or like the motivation was so different than what it is now, and habits and practices just change so much when there's no meat on it anymore. It's not connected in any way anymore, and it just falls away. Like you say, with, for example, with money that you talk about, Homer, that when you realize that the underlying feeling and fear of not having, it's not connected with how much money you have, because that feeling you can have whenever, at any given point.
Right. Well, so I don't know if they've made a study, but there's millionaires that are still struggling and are not happy because they still, that underlying feeling of insecurity, even though they have millions of dollars, it's still there driving them.
Exactly.
So it's not about the money. It's about that insecure feeling, or trying to cover that up or deal with it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was big for me as well, as you mentioned, insecurity. As I moved to Austria 15 years ago, oh, that was all the time there. Yeah, insecurity, finding a job, getting a residence permit. It was just living in this bubble of fear all the time, fear of future. Definitely that fear. That was the big thing. I think the biggest thing for me was the fear of future. Yeah, how it was gonna look like. Always imagining. And coming down, I think, but that I realized later. What thoughts mentioned, fear of dying. I think it's like that's something that it's elephant in the room. I would say that we should get to get the courage to see directly and to approach it and confront it if it makes sense at some point in life. But yeah, feel insecurity, fear of future. This was huge. Sometimes this narrative still appears, but it's not referring to, it's not sticking anymore. But yeah, it was terrible sometimes.
Yeah, so it was quite limiting.
I think that dragged me to Buddhism and awakening. Definitely, yeah. Exactly that. It was something. This was not right. Something was not right to have this fear and yeah.
Well, it's kind of there's a bit of shame coming up as I share this, but my identification to money, of course, extended to my previous relationships. So when my ex-wives did not save, I bring out the hammer, right? And bash them, like, you need to save. Why are you spending your money so frivolous? All of these judgments, all of this stuff. So being able to let that go with Sharon, I don't care what she does with her money. She can do whatever. It's so freeing.
I'm really, really happy you're bringing it up, because this one is we're back to the same thing again, that this one is the gate where if you don't look at this, you will struggle with it in the fourth and the fifth. The fourth is the wants that you want your ex-wife to save, and the don't want, you don't want her to be frivolous with money. So it's that blaming, shaming, complaining thing that goes on out there that we're working with in the fourth and the fifth. But it's only how can I say, a huge issue and something that we keep working with over and over and over if we haven't looked at the third one, which is all the diversions that we do to avoid a feeling. So yeah.
I'm really, really happy you're bringing that one up, because we are going to talk about that in future videos for sure.
So, I had an experience last night that may be related to this. And that is that my wife has been feeling for some time, apparently, that I'm putting too much time into this. And I've also got another business going that I've been putting too much time into. And she said, what I would really like would be for us to go away and you do not take your computer with you. Leave it behind. No more of this, no more of the web development stuff that I'm doing for the time that we're away, at least. And I didn't have a feeling of being threatened by that, because I simply refused to acknowledge the possibility of it. I'm not going to do that. So there was attachment.
Yeah, that's amazing to look at. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's an amazing one to look at.
Mm. So my initial looking at it was a diversion, in that I was looking at all of the things that wouldn't be done, the work that wouldn't be done when with my other business, and the people that I would be abandoning at the groups, and so on and so on. There wasn't an obvious feeling of importance about doing those things, but there is a subtle underlying thing that says, you know, yes, I'm an important person. I need to be available. I need to people please, all that. And I hide from the feeling that comes up when I imagine actually doing that, going for 2 weeks without looking at my computer at all. Wow. So much of my life is in this thing, isn't it?
So you better let me know when you want me to have your Sunday group for you, when you're going off.
Nice, Pranoa.
Oh, sure. I mean, I am indispensable.
You just let me know, and then I take the group, and then you're off for 2 weeks without a computer. Come back with amazing insights.
Oh.
But it's
Lots of stories around that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really, really amazing to look at, you know, whenever there's because, and I'm really grateful for you to bring it up, because everybody who's sitting and watching, they have that, I can't do that. I cannot do that. That's absolutely impossible. Look into it. Of course it's not. Of course you can leave. Of course you can go off for 2 weeks. Just be with your wife and enjoy that, and not having a phone in front of you or a computer in front of you. It's amazing to look at. And underneath that, there's a contraction that you're avoiding to look at. And you're connecting that contraction with having the Sunday groups and doing all the things you're doing.
It's really obvious that it's the stories that come up about what might happen or what might not happen that we use to hide from that uncomfortable feeling. And that uncomfortable feeling isn't even that big until we expose it.
So what is it you think might happen or might not happen?
Well, the world will fall apart without me.
Obviously. Obviously. No, but
I
what
don't know.
is underneath it? What is underneath that?
What comes to mind is being useful, being needed, being helpful, being a good person is part of it there too. Yeah. I do these things because I'm a good person.
But
Yeah.
Vince, you are a good person. So underneath that, because there's nothing wrong with being doing.
But I'm not really a good person. I'm only a good person because I do these things. If I didn't do these things, I wouldn't be a good person anymore.
There you go.
Maybe, yeah.
There you go.
My worth is in my usefulness.
We have so much tied up on doing instead of being. I think your worth is in the being, and it's also what I always compliment you on with the groups. It's that on the Sunday groups, it's that way you are in the group, because you're sitting, and the way you are in the group is amazing as a group leader. And it's not because of all the things you're doing, because you're not really doing much. You know, it's the way that you are, the person that you are, that is amazing in the group.
But I can't help that. That's just the way it is, isn't it?
That's exactly my point. That's exactly my point. You're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. So it's super interesting to look into you leaving for 2 weeks and then coming back to your group. Then what?
Maybe they don't need me anymore.
Look into that.
See, I still identify with good and not so good. There's still these things in my head that say, that's good. That's a good one. Good. You're a good person, good thing to do. I don't feel bad about it, but there's still lots and lots and lots of identification. There are lots of threads there.
Todd, do you want to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I was just kind of enjoying the listening. Sorry.
You weren't paying attention, Todd.
No, I was just very, very tired, and I was just really relaxed, and I was just really enjoying the kind of back and forth with you two, and really, really enjoying your deep dive. And I was not here in that proactive way at all. Sorry.
It's okay.
Well, the word for me when I get into this space is validation.
Vince, we know, from the past that you've talked a lot about wanting to be seen as a good person. And, you brought up about having you're only a good person if you do certain things. You're only worthy of you know, being your existence if you do certain things. So when you bring something like that up, I assume you feel it somewhere in your body.
Mm.
Well, that's what I was meaning before about fooling myself. I'm not aware of any sensation. I can see through the stories. I can see that there's stories about being a good person. It doesn't have any real juice per se. It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's there, it's active.
But something came up when Pernilla said about her taking over your group for 2 weeks and then you not being useful. You know, well, maybe they'll be fine without you. And then there was something
Yeah.
got triggered in there. You reacted to something.
Sure, yeah. Even though I reacted in a kind of a joking way, a light-hearted way,
Yeah.
you could presume that it's based on something serious.
Yeah.
Something
Did you feel some little contraction? Did you feel something that happened in there at the thought of somebody else taking over the group and you not actually being?
No, I didn't.
Useful?
I wasn't aware of any feelings about it. I don't feel really when I come down to specific situations like the groups. I don't actually feel like there's a problem if I'm not there.
Which
When
means
I
does that mean that you're going on holiday with your wife?
There's
So
a good chance.
so we're stopping now in a second, and you're leaving the car and you're going into your wife and saying we're taking 2 weeks, and then giving her a date.
I have all of these preconditions first.
Go on, bring it on. Because these are the diversions. These are exactly the third Fetter diversions. There's an underlying feeling, and now you have all the but I can't because and because and because. Those are just the diversions. Those are the third Fetter diversions, and every single one you bring up is part of something that you have said before. It's not something completely new. It's the same excuses that we use over and over and over and over because we're not that inventive. So it's the same thing that you're bringing up. So bring it on.
You said you had a lot of ways that the world would end if, you know, if the world would fall apart if you're not doing these things. So what are those things that come up? What are these thoughts that come up?
It's very vague. I want to say, I was just joking about that. You know, that was all a very light-hearted thing. But of course, I recognise that's a great cover. So maybe I'm just keeping away from what would happen, the possible negatives.
Yeah, or maybe it's not about the groups at all.
No.
But if you go into it now and you say, okay, we finish shortly, and then you're leaving the car and you're going up to your wife and you're saying, babe, we're going on a holiday, and then you give a date where you're going on the holiday, and then you sort out who got your group. What is happening in your body when I'm saying that? What things come to mind? But I can't because, and we can't do it in September. It's almost done, and next week after that we can't, and in October we can't, and what things come up? What resistance stories are coming up? Because all of that, it's just stories. It's just assumptions about stories, and that it's super interesting because underneath, all of them have the same starting point. And if you look into that, then all of them fall away.
Yeah. Yeah, none jump up. And it seems quite reasonable that I can go away. And then I say, but there's a couple of things I've got to fix up first, particularly with the website that I'm working on at the moment. And it would be easy to take my computer with me and work on them while I'm away, but that would defeat the purpose.
It would. It would.
And what if you didn't? What if you didn't fix it up before you leave?
It would fix up when I got back, wouldn't it?
Huh?
Yeah.
Do you feel anything come up at the thought of leaving it unfinished?
No, not really. There's a subtle one that comes up that says something like, everything will be fine. And there's this feeling of an even greater freedom that would ensue from just not doing any of that anymore.
Look into
There's
your
no
motivations
fear,
for,
yeah.
I was going to say, look into your motivations for actually doing the things that you're doing.
Well, the only motivation I can apply comes afterwards, looking back on it, and that is that it makes me feel good. I feel good about doing these things. I feel good about helping people. I feel good about achieving stuff. And as I say, there's no strong sense of fear or anxiety or anything about not doing them. There was when it was suggested last night, there was a feeling of, no, I'm simply not going to do that, you know. But now it's on the cards. Sure, thank you, everybody. It's definitely on the cards. Yeah.
So all you needed was what Homer was talking about, that he experienced with Sharon, that you had a completely nope, not doing that yesterday. And then by just allowing it to be there and bringing it up to the surface now and talking about it, then you feel that, okay, there's actually wiggle room here. It's not that contracted. It was just a primary no. But underneath, when you really look into it, and also a lot of times we don't know what underlying, like Todd was talking about, he has no idea what changed about his diet. It just changed because a lot of things are pre-verbal. You know, we can't explain why we fight as we and defend as we do and all of that. And as soon as we just have softness about it and hold it a little bit more lightly, then it dissolves. Then it completely dissolves, and you might never ever find out what it's really about. But it was about something that was super important. It's not anymore.
I would have to say,
could have simply been a fear of letting go of the reins. And now that you've just examined what's behind the resistance, then that just collapses and just isn't relevant.
Yeah. If we didn't have this group this morning, I may have been stuck in that flat out refusal.
Maybe.
The mere fact that we've been able to talk about it, and as you say, it just airs it out. It changes things. It does, yeah.
Yes.
But it does require talking about it in a certain way. You know, in talking about it in this group, I imagine that if I was just talking about it with my wife, I'd still be in a defensive mode, and so it wouldn't happen. That letting go that has happened. Yeah.
it is why groups are very, very important. Either groups or a guide. It is why it's very, very important to have a place where and it's also why I always recommend your group to anybody who listens, because it is important to have a place to go and to talk about these things with people that are not judging in any way, that is holding everything in complete open space, and whatever comes up is fine. I mean, Homer sitting and admitting that he's passive aggressive, and all of us still love Homer, it's completely fine, because there's nothing, he doesn't need to be in a certain way, because we know that is just identification, and that it's so important to have a group like that where there's no identification and everybody knows that there's no identification.
Yeah, extremely valuable.
Yeah, it is. It
Yeah,
really
we
is.
also tried, Vince, to maybe step out from your perspective and try to understand why your wife wants to do that, like her reasoning to understand.
I can understand. Yeah.
Is it helps when trying to understand her perspective? Does it that help to get, to make a decision or
No. She's got a fucked perspective. And part of me says it's not going to change anything.
What is supposed to change?
Our relationship, I guess, or her feeling towards me.
Mm.
That currently she feels abandoned by me because her words something like, those friends, that's you people, those friends are more important than I am.
No. Yeah, it's not a nice feeling.
And I can get that she's feeling that, but I can't change it for her.
Absolutely true. I completely agree with that. You can't change that she feels abandoned. That is her that needs to work with it. But you can have compassion.
Yeah. Well, it's not even. I do have compassion. The important thing is though that she experiences my compassion.
And you express your compassion. Yeah.
I do express it, and frequently it just gets thrown back at me because it's not seen for the way I mean it, But
And you have compassion towards that too?
Ooh. Oh, barbs of the heart, that one's. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. That was good. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Love you. It's an old one. It's like, I'm having this extramarital affair with you guys because I can be myself with you. And I so ache to be able to be myself with her. I kind of can be myself with strangers and other people, but yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Be myself. What a strange term that is.
Well, I'm curious. Who are you with her? What is it that seems like it has to change to fit in with her?
That's a hard one. It's a bit subtle probably because I do things with her happily because it's a sharing thing. But she doesn't see it that way. She hasn't seen it that I went and played bowls with her yesterday because whatever, or we watch stuff on Netflix because I'm doing it with her. That if she wasn't around, I wouldn't even turn the television on, for example. But she then says, I'm not making you do those things. No, of course not. I know you're not making me do them. I'm doing them because I want to do them. But I wouldn't particularly watch what we watched if I were by myself. I watched it because I'm with you. But it doesn't mean that you're making me do it. It doesn't mean that I'm sacrificing in order to do it. I'm doing it because I want to.
So you're a slightly different person with her than you would be without her in terms of behavior, but where's the discomfort in that? Because it sounds like you do willingly want to do the things that you're doing with her, but you say that you can't be you with her the way that you can be with us. So what is it other than not watching television with us that you would watch with her? What is it that's actually different about how do you feel constricted or confined in your relationship with her that you're not allowed to express something, or there's something it sounds like that's you're holding back with her that you're not with us, but what is that?
Probably the fairly touchy talk stuff. It's funny, isn't it? Because with strangers, I accept that they're not seeing the world from the perspective that I see the world from, but yet I can still be myself. Although I guess in a modified way, because I wouldn't talk about this stuff with a stranger. Equally, I don't talk about it with my wife.
Yeah, that I wanted to ask you. Do you share that with your wife, your awakening?
I feel like it threatens her.
Or is there like a need for you that arises that you have to share that you need to share because this is very important for you, and that she's your partner and then you have to share? It's not fair, maybe, that would make you closer.
I guess I feel judged, which inhibits disclosure.
Is she allowed to judge you?
Well, that's going to happen anyway. It's not a matter of allowing.
Is she allowed to? Is she allowed not to agree with you? Is she allowed to judge you? Is she allowed to do you give her that freedom?
Oh, she does it, yes.
It's not what I said.
But can you give her can you, from your internal perspective, give her the freedom without wanting it to be different?
You mean, can I accept that she won't understand where I'm coming from?
No. I mean, when she's judging you, you say something and she's judging you for it. How can you say something like that? It's completely silly. That's not how the world is. Can you be in a world where she has that opposite opinion? Can you be in the world where she judge you for the touchy-feely stuff that we talk about?
But so that it doesn't touch anything in you. It's her experience expressing a perspective, just like somebody on the television that you don't take directly serious.
It's her world. She's allowed to judge you as much.
Sure, I get that. Yeah, but there's some identification there again. If she sees me wrongly,
yeah,
that's where the pain is for me. Yeah, so it's identification again. Yeah,
exactly.
You need to defend yourself. Like, is that happening?
Yeah, and sometimes that defense is withdrawal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
But then it's also an avoidance, to
Yeah,
avoid the
Yeah.
judgment, you withdraw so you don't go into that uncomfortable feeling, and that is why you don't share openly.
Yep. And I do recognize the withdrawal thing too. I mean, after that episode last night, I went to bed. I withdrew. I went to bed, and I was really tired. Uncharacteristically early for me. It was like 9:30. I don't normally go to sleep until 12:30, but here I was at 9:30. Could not keep my eyes open. It was definitely an escape from the unpleasantness, a tiredness. Yeah.
Would you be fine if you never talk about, this touchy feeling awakening stuff with your wife ever? Like, would you be fine with that situation?
Yeah, I would be. I have been. I mean, we've been married 56 years now, so I've lived a lot of time under those circumstances. Yeah, I would be. It's when she wants something from me that I don't want to give, I guess. Yeah. That's where the conflict comes in. Yeah.
And where
And it's not a normal thing. It's in the background usually.
Yeah, but then also look at the conditioning. No, not the conditioning. Look on the condition that you do want to give her what she asked for when, and you do not want to give her what she asked for when. What is it? What condition needs to be there for you to be generous and compassionate and loving? She needs to be in a certain way for you to.
Yeah. No, I think I'm that way all the time. But she doesn't feel like I am. I,
But Vince, do you see that she's right?
do I see what?
Do you see that she's right?
Yeah, I can see that her description is really legitimate for her. Yes.
And then can you have compassion for that?
I could if it was impersonal. Yeah. That's the possibility that comes out of this, or even the probability that comes out of this, is that compassion.
Because it's funny how it's always the issue that we put on other people is always the issue that we have ourselves. We're just pretending that it's an her issue, that she needs to be more understandable for you having those friends that you do touchy-feely awakening talks with, that she should be more understanding towards that. Turn it around. You could be more understanding towards her
Yes.
having the resistance, and it's exactly the same feeling that you have that she has.
Okay.
And
So when I say,
because of that, you can meet it straight away, because
Yeah.
you know exactly how she feels.
so what came to mind when you were talking then was that a message that I would love for her to hear is that she does not need to feel threatened by this. And so a lot of her behavior I would describe as jealousy, although she denies it, but nevertheless. And from my heart, the giant feeling of there is no threat to her. This is not threatening her in any which way, It's got to be good for her.
Yep, but it is in her world. It is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You're sitting in your car at 5:30 in the morning.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, it might as well be a mistress you were talking to. You know, we have
Absolutely.
we
Yeah.
have your
And yet
heart.
I'm being considerate because she's still in bed and I'm not interfering with her.
Yeah,
I'm
I know, but
considerate person, aren't I? Yeah.
but Vince, we have your
Yes.
heart, and we have your emotions, and we have your attention, and we have your care. The entire group, you see, I see you sit in a group and there are 30 people in front of you, and you have the most open heart to all of them. She doesn't. I understand why she's jealous. We get all the good parts. She get the stumpy one that is stumping to bed at 9:30 in the evening.
Yeah.
That won't even have 2 weeks holiday with her. So turn it around and see that it doesn't help that you say, sweetheart, there's no need to be jealous, because there is need to be jealous. She is jealous. So there is need to be jealous. If there wasn't a need, she wouldn't be. But she is jealous. So there must be a need to be jealous. And then see it from that end.
Yeah.
And that is the bitch about being awakened. You know? You have to you have to be the bigger person because you can see it from all angles. Sucks.
Yeah, but it's also liberating that when you find the compassion for and understanding, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
So I didn't mean for this thing of mine to take us away from the third Fetter talk we're intending here.
This is better. I can leave it in or I can cut it out. It's completely up to you. But this is third Fetter stuff. This was exactly what people are sitting and struggling with and carrying into the fourth Fetter and the fifth Fetter. And then they are stuck there over and over and over and over with the same thing over and over and over. This is third Fetter stuff, because this is the diversion that we do to avoid feeling that contraction underneath. This is exactly third Fetter stuff. So I can leave it in or cut it out. It's completely up to you.
Oh, no, I'm fine with it. Yeah. I have to say, here in this group, I don't care what people think of me. I have no invested interest in presenting a certain persona, so to speak. Maybe that's not so always out there, but it certainly is here. I'm sure people will identify regardless. Some people who it's appropriate for will see how it relates to themselves.
This what just happened now, it's so recognizable. It's so recognizable for thousands and thousands of people. They're going to recognize themselves in this, because this is so normal that we divert from the underlying feeling that we have and don't look into it, you know. And then that was that life, but you look into it, and you do it in an open forum like this. It's beautiful.
I can very much relate to Vince with all this relationship stuff and talking about awakening to your partner. Also, there was a time when I was also wanted to talk. There was like really couldn't understand why I couldn't share that with my wife, and there's really an urge to do that. And we talked, and it went bad. And I stopped talking, but still there was, no, I need to talk about that. I need to talk about it. It was gone after a while. I don't need to talk about that. And it's, I just, if she asks me, great. If I share these moments with you, but I share other moments with her that are also very, very intimate. So it doesn't matter at the end, but that's the liberation we're talking about. You know, when you don't need, you're not forced to do something. You know, even when it's so intimate as this stuff. These are very, very intimate stuff. But yeah, but definitely I know where you're coming from with this. it's not easy, of course. It's a different stuff, but
Oh, I meant to tell you, Kathy messaged to say she wouldn't make it today.
Oh.
Okay. Next time. He has had a rough a rough year.
Oh, she
Yeah.
just had 4 people in her family all die within the last couple of months.
But okay, if that's it, I think I would stop the recording. And first of all, I would like to say thank you to all of you. I love you so much. I think you're bloody amazing, all of you. Thank you so much for this. It's been amazing. And the next time we meet is for the 4th Fetter. So thank you for now. I just stopped the recording. All of you, please stay.
yeah.
Bye.